Not sure if anyone is watching in YouTube. Oh, there we go.
Okay.
Oh, damn it. My internet is super bad, apparently.
Oh, that's unfortunate. I guess we can all just turn off our cameras and then you might be able to manage.
Oh, no, sorry. I was wrong. My internet is fine. My camera seems to be broken for a couple of days, but I keep forgetting. I have a lot in my head right now.
Sorry about that.
All right. I say that we can start. Usually, Gabe joins these kind of meetings, but since it's already late, let's better not get more delay. So, yeah, it's been a while since our last meeting. We've been trying to reschedule to point in time that Sebastian can join us, but it seems that it's difficult for him to join regardless of the time and day, and I wanted to just get a time that he may be joining in the future. So that's why we changed the dates. I hope that it's okay for you guys. Is this a good time for you, or you needed to do something to join today?
Works for me.
Same here.
Cool. Status report. We've been doing a lot lately, but not at the usual or at the pace that we had at the beginning. Since the last meeting, I think Daniel has been contributing a lot, and that's been really helpful, especially for code reviews, because we didn't really have a lot of code review before. So that's really good. And we've landed a good chunk of milestones, including using UUIDs as the main ID driver for both relationships and entity IDs, or resource entity IDs, which is good, and it's also configurable, so you can set a config property to say, hey, I want to use UUID, or I want to use just IDs to load the objects or to upcast the entities. So that's one. We've moved to the JSON API compliant error handling, which was also good, but there is still some work that may need to happen. One of the things that we put in there, since the spec is a little bit vague, it just gives you a placeholder to put whatever you need to put in the error messages. If you have enough permissions to see the reports, right now with the current implementation, you can see a stack trace of the error, if there is a stack trace. So you can debug a little bit better. That's good for development purposes when you're integrating with JSON API. What else, Daniel? You probably have a better memory than I have.
So yeah, one issue is the categorizability metadata one, which you can maybe be interested in. So
yes.
This one.
Yeah, exactly.
In the chat. So so currently we don't check access. Well, we check access, but we don't pass along all those metadata onto the response.
Right, I've been working on that just this morning, in between diapers, and I think I have something close. I have something working, but I don't have something that satisfies me. So I want to work a little bit. The problem here everyone for more context, is that we need to somehow bubble the metadata because we have includes, and that is something that REST did not have to deal with. Of course, we need to get all the payloads tagged and with the appropriate context. And since we are doing this recursive process for the normalization, we need to somehow signal all that up and bubble it. It's not ready yet, but I can submit a patch, and it would be awesome if Wim, you could review it or see if we're doing something that is especially bad.
Right. Yeah, I saw your ping, which was from early today, I think. I was deep in other patches, so I haven't been able to look at it yet. But at first glance, it definitely looks like it's heading in the right direction. I think I may need to have a better understanding of the JSON API module before I can really provide very good feedback, and that can guide you to a better place, perhaps. But from a high-level point of view, I hear you're saying that it's mostly about includes, and includes have their own cacheability metadata and access cacheability metadata and so on. My very high-level question would be, do includes look exactly the same as if they were requested independently? So let's assume is the response body the same for requesting taxonomy term 5 directly versus including taxonomy term 5? Or is there a difference in the representation when it is included?
Yeah, I think that the answer is yes. So
yes, they're the same, or
yeah, they are the same. At some point in the fractal, because you can zoom in at different levels of include. You do have the same payload, but
okay.
that kind of depends on the URL as well.
Okay.
Because you can have sparse field sets, but we're dealing with that already.
Okay. Well, in that case, I think the very high-level response could be very simple, which is, as long as you make sure that the data you're dealing with are response objects, so an include would just be talking to the controller that provides that data, and if that controller then returns a response object, and that response object itself already includes the necessary cacheability metadata, then you can just read the cacheability metadata from that response when you are including it in another response, and just merge it together with that referencing thing. So I think that could work just fine, and that fits in with everything else architecturally, I think.
Okay.
But maybe,
at the moment, includes aren't really like sub-requests or something, but rather some kind of value objects. But I mean, basically, all those objects we have should implement definable cacheable dependency interface.
Right. Yeah, that could also work.
And then yeah, everything has to be inherited or like passed along through the chain.
Yep. Yep.
And that is the exact implementation that I'm working on.
Mateo, you're very far away from the mic, it sounds like. I couldn't understand you just now.
Really? Damn. I have this wireless headset, and apparently I'm going through the laptop. Okay. Sorry.
No problem.
So I was saying that this is the implementation I'm dealing with. I'm working on, but instead of responses, as Daniel was saying, I'm using the refinable cacheability metadata trait. So every object knows about the cacheability metadata, and at the end, since we always return a document root wrapper that goes into the response, in there we can read everything in there. So it seems like it may be the good direction after all.
Yeah, well, so basically what I was suggesting is something that could work, because I know that responses do have that cacheability metadata. They carry it forward. And that way they are able to bubble it up to the parent or root responses if in case of a nested response, which is really what this is about. And include is basically a nested response in the main response, if you will. But if you do the same principle thing, the same concept in a different way, as in not using response objects, but something else that is a value object that carries that metadata along, that's equivalent. I just guessed that maybe that was the simplest way, but if you already have an architecture supporting this, that's great too. Doesn't matter.
I have another question. So currently we have like this refinable category dependency trait on like multiple implementations, for example, of document root normalize the value interface. I was wondering whether like the interfaces itself should extend the refinable interface to ensure that actually all those objects have that metadata.
Yeah, sure. I was wondering that myself. I moved from one to the other, trying to find semantics in there.
Right.
But I'm good if for convenience, so we can make sure there is an instance of checking the instance of refinable cacheability metadata trait or interface somewhere. But yeah, we can move that to the main interface, so we can ensure that.
Yeah, so I think that it actually touches on a very interesting point, and I think this is something Daniel and I have talked about several times in the past, I guess at this point, years, while working on 888's core at that time. The annoying thing is that if you make your interfaces, the one specific to the JSON API module, extend this interface, then you're tying your data model, your semantics, to something that isn't technically, strictly speaking, related to it. So in that regard, I would say, yes, let's not do that. But the downside is that as soon as you do not tie your interfaces into the cacheability related ones, the problem is that anybody, in this case, for example, implementing a custom normalizer, I think, or whatever the extending thing is in any module's case, as soon as any of those are not implementing and therefore not providing cacheability metadata, that means the entire response is not cacheable, or it will not be invalidated when necessary.
Yeah.
And so it's annoying, but it feels like a necessary evil almost.
Right. I mean, but still, like, people can still make really easy mistakes in implementing that interface, right? I mean, they could miss adding the cache context, for example. I mean, on the other hand, it's also like a general problem of PHP. Like, the fact how the inheritance on the interface and the class level works is just not flexible enough for really nice architectures.
Right. Yeah. And to be fair, this stuff is generating data for responses, and if you want those responses to be cacheable, then you need to be aware of all the metadata surrounding it in the code that is actually generating that data. And so it's annoying, but it's almost necessary. And like Daniel says, maybe in a different language it would be possible, but yeah, we have to be realistic, of course.
Yeah, I actually have no preference between two interfaces, one extending to the other, or just one interface, and then at the entry point have a check of the instance of, and if not, then throw an error. For me, it's the same, so I can go either way.
Yeah, I'll leave that up to you guys. But overall, the patch looks great from a first scan.
So Daniel, I know that you have some advances and comments on the type graph front.
Yeah. So I had a conversation with Sam the other day about graphs in general and stuff like that, and we talked about the general architecture of how we represent like the graph of types. So just to give a quick overview for Wim about how the type of data graph currently looks like. So basically, we have different types of nodes in this graph. So we have like a complex node, which is similar to type data, complex stuff. So a complex node has stores like subnodes by key. So similar to like a field item where you have like field item dot value, you also have in a complex node like this sub node stored by key. And Sam made the point that it is quite complex, or it is wrong to put the complexity of the system into different kind of nodes, but rather, if you think about it, this is really something which is related to the relations between the nodes. So he suggested to change, to move away from having types of nodes to move to having type of relationships between those nodes. And this is kind of how all the graph implementations and graph literature out there work. I've tried to come up with an image. Oh, I have never uploaded it. How to that? But yeah, I'm not sure how useful this discussion actually is at that point.
Do you mean it's too early?
Yeah, well, it is too abstract in a way.
Hmm.
Let me see, can I upload SVGs here? No, I can't. I'm going to convert an SVG to a PNG. I open it in Chrome and make it switch.
I would take a screenshot, but then very
Yeah.
rudimentary.
Works.
That's getting things done.
Exactly.
So this is the issue, and it has now a nice little image. Which is not useful. So here you see like this graph, well, at least a really simple one. So node, this is a complex data because it has known subkeys, and then there's the title field item list, which is also which is a different type of node because it's a list node, and then underneath you have the field item title, which is again is a complex one, and then value is like a super simple node. And we could change that to have to let every node be the same kind of thing, but rather encode everything in the relations. So you see like there's like a complex relation with a key property and a list relation and another complex relation. And it seems to be that with that kind of technique, we could leverage more of the existing graph libraries out there, or could even, when one day we have maybe even a graph database, leverage more things from there.
Cool. I don't really think I don't have enough experience in this area to be able to give meaningful advice. I think Sam Boyer has done a lot with graphs in the last few years, so I think his advice we should definitely look into. But yeah, at one level, I almost wonder what the point is, because we're just moving the complexity from the graph nodes into the graph edges. Does it really gain us anything? I could potentially see how that could help, but I don't know the graph libraries that are around that you just mentioned would be easier to then use. So I don't have a good sense of that would actually, if that actually would be the case, if it would make things simpler or not. I would personally just say go with whatever you feel for now is the simplest thing, and maybe just keep that marked as an internal thing, and then later on you can still, based on lessons learned, improve it. But maybe this is the vast majority of what this is about, and if you're already seeing the pains and this would make things simpler, then sure. But yeah, doesn't really help you, I know. But
I just want to express that I don't see any. I don't see like any kind of vision in there yet, like any kind of
what?
Any kind of vision, any kind of architecture, which kind of any kind of big picture about the problem space or so.
Right. Yeah. Same for me. But that's why I'm saying for now, perhaps it's easier to just do if we are on path X right now and path Y looks potentially better, maybe it's better to see where path X actually breaks down. Maybe you're already seeing that, I don't know. But yeah, I don't see any clear benefits or downsides for now.
So to my understanding, the type graph library was conceived as something that could be beneficial for both JSON API and GraphQL, and something that we could leverage to join efforts and ultimately reduce the effort of maintenance because we only have one code base, or at least instead of having two big code bases, we have two smaller ones and one shared. So at this point, since I don't think that anyone at the JSON API team can see a clear benefit from the type graph library before we can see this vision that Sebastian has, because he can see it very, very clearly, but we've never really had the time to sit down and put our hands and bang our heads against the problem. I would say that right now it's not a blocker for anyone, and correct me if I'm wrong, and we can always refactor and come back to this idea of reducing the maintenance efforts.
Yeah, I totally agree. I would rather even think that JSON API is a good playground to know what, for example, a type graph would need, rather than the other architecture, which would be like design a big architecture first and then like integrate it into JSON API. Probably doesn't fit then into the use cases.
So actually, that while Matteo was talking about, while Matteo was talking, I realized that why haven't we mentioned Sebastian Fewey yet? Because he has done a lot of work in this area, because this is really what GraphQL is very core to function. So I'm wondering, have we talked to him already? And what
totally.
Does he have? Like,
well, he just doesn't have.
Does he have a firm opinion about this particular thing?
He doesn't, because he's on holiday until tomorrow. So, but yeah, I mean, I talk with him all the time about that. But we just don't really have a clear vision on that.
Okay.
Especially because, I mean, in order for it to be really useful, it would not only have to be a type graph, but rather it actually has to be some kind of graph where you can also get data out and convert between the representations on the type level and the value level, which is super abstract. And honestly, I think it was just a mistake to put that into all the blog posts.
I agree.
But
I agree.
I mean, sorry, but yeah.
Yeah, I voiced my concern about that as well. I thought it was not worth mentioning because it's an implementation detail, but others decided otherwise. So
I would actually suggest that we should stop talking about it now and maybe work like in the background or so, but rather focus on JSON API.
Yeah, +1.
Or GraphQL.
I agree about that, and I want to also add that I had kind of an idea of how to integrate that, and it made sense for me at New Orleans, but then the whole ruined that vision for me. So normalizers and denormalizers, our way of working a little bit better. Okay, so if you guys don't mind or have anything else to add about the type graph, it seems like we decided to stop talking about it. I would ask the room, if you have any perception at all of how the JSON API development is going, if you have any suggestions, any comments like, I don't know, reach to this person or go try to get this other person involved because they want to collaborate or things like that.
So I'm the most outside person, I think, at this point. I haven't contributed or collaborated with but from my very outside point of view, it seems like there's a lot of progress being made. I see a lot of activity in the issue queue. I check on the issue queue from like maybe once a week. That's what I've been doing. I don't even go into the issues for now because I've got lots of other things going on. So from my point of view, I have the impression, the sense that that you guys are working enthusiastically on it and are making good progress. But maybe that's not correct. So that's it for me.
I'm wondering who are the 21 users of the module, because there are 21 installations of the module out there. So I'm wondering how we could reach out to them, because yeah, it would be quite useful, I think, to actually get feedback from them.
Yeah, feedback, that would be awesome.
Yeah, right. I mean, I don't know, Matteo, you don't use the module on an actual site.
No, I use a kind of modified and perverted version of it in Drupal 7. And that worked well for us for a long time, but we're not talking about the same thing.
Yeah. So what about Gabe or Gabe?
I think that Gabe wanted to start using it in a project. I wonder if they went around and started that project, because I think that he mentioned that, yeah, we should reach him and see how they're doing with it. That's a good idea.
And I know that Ed Faulkner from Ember was also very actively contributing, or at least actively discussing this stuff, JSON API stuff, features, functionality. At DrupalCon New Orleans. Have you been in touch with him since then?
Yeah, I can him every once in a while. He has not been able to contribute at all with the project because he has other things to do, and
right.
he wanted.
Go ahead.
Oh no, I just asked yesterday. Do you want to invite, etc.? And he said yes. So that's a good sign because he plans to be involved when he has time. If that happens or not, I guess that no one knows yet, but he is still enthusiastic about this idea.
And has he been able to try it, test it, provide feedback, or not yet?
No, I don't think so, because I think that the module that he had provided enough things for him to get going, and that's my impression, though. I haven't asked.
Okay.
All right.
Is there something else we could talk about?
I wanted to ask your opinion on something. So one of the outstanding issues that we have with REST is the multiple operations in one request, right? We solved that in general. We solved that with the includes and the collections and filtering. We don't have to do multiple requests to find stuff. But there is an extension that is in the making for JSON API that kind of defines these operations in an RPC level and even transcends HTTP. The idea is to come up with a JSON API friendly, and I mean JSON API friendly in the payload format that you can specify a request. And right now we are using JSON API over REST, so that means that we get the information of the path in the URL, we get the information of the parameters in the query string parameters, the action that you want to perform in the HTTP verb, and then the context from the HTTP headers. So if instead of getting all this information from the REST dialect, we went ahead and defined JSON API-like payload to define these operations, we could then have the same behavior that we have with JSON API, because everything would be the same, but instead of reading from the URL and the headers, etc., you would read from a structured payload. We could then support things like sockets. We could then support things like a front controller, like GraphQL does. You have just a URL and you post the request as a nearly JSON object. So we could do the same, and that would be key. Doing something like that, that would be key to post, for instance, a node with a file and a couple of tags while updating a reference or something. You know, these complex operations that we do in a form that sometimes involves updating an object inside of an object, and the other one we replace it, etc. So that would be our way of doing it. I don't believe that multiple operations can be done within REST, like multiple write operations. So I'm kind of thinking of this stuff for the future.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds really, really interesting, especially being able to be decoupled from HTTP in a way, because that would maybe also allow us in the future to leverage some of the HTTP 2 functionality in a better way. Because you can also send multiple responses at the same time, for example. So I could imagine that we could, by being more abstract, leverage HTTP 2, for example, later in a better way. But in order to support that, I guess we would also need to go away from the HTTP level. Do you think that's needed in the code itself?
I would say that JSON API is the JSON API module for Drupal is REST centric, and everything else that is not should happen in a JSON API ecosystem or a JSON API submodule or whatever. Maybe we can call it JSON API _ transactions and have the worst name ever. But I don't know. I think that REST is a big thing inside of JSON API, and it should remain like that.
So yeah, I mean, theoretically, we could somehow magically do the wrapping, some kind of wrapper around our HTTP API internally, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And we could even support transactions, and right now transform those transactions into request objects, and allow the program to continue the flow until we figure out how to leverage that at a different level.
Yeah, so I find this very interesting, but my initial understanding was that it was precisely to work around limitations of HTTP 1, in the sense that you cannot do, well, basically you have to wait for server responses. You cannot execute multiple things at the same time, because that would mean setting up multiple HTTP 1 connections, that sort of problem. And as Daniel mentioned, HTTP 2 kind of solves that, because you have multiplexing, you have streams within a single connection. So I'm a little bit confused by why this would still be relevant in a world where HTTP 2 is common, because that was my understanding. Maybe I haven't read the GitHub issue yet on the JSON API GitHub repo, but am I missing something big there? Or is it mainly about that? Because that's what seems to me to be the big value. You avoid many round trips by executing multiple things at the same time, which is painful to do in HTTP 1.
Right. I mean, I think the main difference here is that we talk also about update operations here. So you can send multiple update operations at the same time, in which you don't
specify dependencies between those.
Yeah.
Like this needs to happen first, and this other operation can happen asynchronously, even if we don't have that concept yet. Coming up with a transport format or protocol, well, it would not be a protocol, but a format that we can rely on and be future-proof, that would make me happy. So this is the kind of stuff that I'm thinking. If you guys think I'm just not heading in the right direction, feel free to shut it down.
No, I wouldn't do that, but I do want to understand it better. I'm hearing myself an echo somewhere a little bit. The thing is, what you said just now, Matteo, about being able to just, for now, a solution could be that whatever data is posted on the server side, it is then converted into multiple request objects, and those are executed as if they were the requests coming in. I think that is a very elegant solution. And that, to me, sounds like a further confirmation that this is something we only need for the time where HTTP 2 is not yet widely deployed, because as soon as you have HTTP 2, you can just do that within HTTP 2. But it is a nice workaround for HTTP 1. On the other hand, I think that this points to a kind of missing feature in REST, because it is not possible today to do basically the transaction aspect. So for example, you have to update these 5 taxonomy terms, or 5, well, user, taxonomy term, node, whatever it is. You have to update them all or none of them. That is not something you can easily do today with REST. But then I'm starting to, at the same time, wonder again if that was not the whole purpose of REST, that you don't have to deal with those things, and that is abstracted precisely within such a REST request. I don't feel like I'm enough of a REST expert to answer those things, but it is a very interesting intersection of different areas and potential solutions and so on, for sure. So just because it is so interesting, and because I think that the thing we need to do here is to figure out whether it makes sense and why it does not make sense, as in really clearly define which specific use cases you cannot achieve with REST plus HTTP 1 or REST plus HTTP 2, or neither of them, that this could. And if you can provide such a list, then I think we'll get a much better understanding of why we would want to do this. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, well, just one general comment about the idea of REST. I mean, REST has a resource, and just one resource, right? And I think that's kind of the fundamental problem, that REST always points to some kind of resource, whether it's a collection of something or whether it's a single thing of something. But we actually really want to push multiple different things onto the server, for example, or even like on GraphQL side, request multiple different kind of things from the server.
Right.
And I guess that's somewhere where REST falls down.
Well, you could argue that it falls down, or you could argue that, yes, it's multiple requests, but they can happen in parallel, and in HTTP 1, that is painful, but in HTTP 2, it is not painful. So
I see what you mean. So you could actually execute all the requests already.
yes,
Or guess it. I mean...
Yeah, you can execute them all at once, and then the TCP/IP and HTTP stacks in your operating system are responsible for issuing them in a performant manner without overloading the network and blah blah blah, that sort of thing. Yeah. So in that sense, if that is the problem you want to solve, I suspect, but I'm not enough of an expert to know this with full authority, if you will. It sounds like HTTP2 solves those specific problems for us. But yeah, further research warranted for sure.
Yeah, sure. That is true. At the same time, I feel like at the same time, I feel that we still need to have some somehow like a scheduler or something that tells you this thing can happen in parallel, but this other one you can't. You need the information in the response. This kind of stuff. How to specify that from a client perspective. That is what I was mostly talking about, but then I touched other things as well in there.
Right.
And basically, it's because I still don't have a clear picture myself.
Yeah, but that is very interesting because it goes back to the things that databases do and were basically innovative for or in. I think at this point several decades ago, the whole ability to do complex transactions with complex conditions. If this thing fails, then this thing must also be reverted. But if this thing fails, then if this other thing had already been inserted or updated, then that's okay, that can stay in there. That is basically what you're talking about. The concurrency and in case of failure, reverting and so on, things in parallel, things in sequence. And the web really doesn't have a standard solution for that for sure. So it's interesting. It's like rebuilding something that exists on a different layer at this point, which is something you see all over.
Yeah. So I don't have anything else. I just want to add that I'm totally fine on having non-REST stuff mixed with REST, because I don't think that we can solve everything with pure and pristine REST. So that was my take on that.
Yep.
Okay, so I would say that next step is solve all the things and get done.
Right. And we have another call about like also REST stuff in core at some point.
Yes. I can try to look it up. It's not today for sure. It is. I thought it was next. Yeah, it is next week. Next week at 7 Central European time. So that's 3 hours after this meeting. So next week, 3 hours after this meeting next week.
Awesome. I think that what we need to work on is to get issues ready so other people can jump in and start contributing, which I think it's a lacking thing in the JSON API issue queue.
Oh, I would totally disagree with you. You are doing a really great job there.
Yeah, I think we have fewer contributors to the core REST module almost than you have in JSON API, or it's a similar number. So, and at this early stage for the JSON API module, I think that's great. So.
Okay, then I retract my words.
I think it's tough to hope for more at this point. Actually, on that subject, just one final question. Are you blocked in any way on anything in the core REST module?
No, I haven't found that rock in the past.
Okay.
What about you, Daniel?
Yeah, not really. I mean, sadly, I also don't work on an actual live project using that kind of technology stack. So,
well, we're making it so that you actually can do that in a less frustrating way, hopefully with Drupal 8 too. So,
yeah, we could talk about a little bit what could land in 8.2 or what should land in 8.2, or is it more about next week?
well, if you want to, we can do it here, but yeah, it's less JSON API specific for sure.
That's true. Yeah, fair. So, I mean, we won't try to even get anything JSON API related into core for 8.2. I think we agree on that.
Yep.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
All right, guys, I'm gonna call it a meeting.
All right, thanks for organizing this, Mateo.
Yeah, it's always cool to talk with you guys.
Likewise.
Bye, everyone.
Yeah,
Bye.
have a nice week, I guess. Bye.
Yeah, have a nice week and evening. Bye-bye.